Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, a Twitter beef has emerged in the sport of boxing once again. This time between Richardson Hitchins, the IBF Junior welterweight champion, and Devin the Dream Haney, 3-division world champion. Now, Richardson Hitchins called out Devin Haney. Look, both of these guys are available to fight. You know what I'm saying? But as we all know, these fights take time. How many times have we seen fighters go back and forth and nothing truly come through fruition? It's very, very rare in the sport. Very, very rare in the sport of boxing that these matchups happen in the ring. But very regular that these matchups happens on the Twitter or X, formerly known as Twitter app. Richardson Hitchins calls out Devin Haney. Now, as we all know, that report have stated that Richardson Hitchins is mandated to fight mandatory challenger Lindolfo Delgado. Eddie Hearn has confirmed that the IBF has now ordered Richardson Hitchins to defend his super lightweight title against mandatory challenger. But Jack Donovan, respectable journalist, told that the order was already rescinded since it came before the time frame in which the mandatory is due. Hitchins is still has a window to secure a voluntary title defense, which this could be Devin Haney. This could be Richardson Hitchins there in the big gray and go to the 147-pound division, just like Shakur Stevenson, his boy, daring to be great, going to be fighting Teofimo Lopez in the 140-pound division, Madison Square Garden, January 31st. Look, we seen Richardson Hitchins go back and forth with Keyshawn Davis. We thought that it was going to be Richardson Hitchins versus Keyshawn Davis in the co-main event of Teofimo Lopez versus Shakur, and that would have been an extraordinary. It would have added up to more of an extraordinary event, right? We seen them go back and forth during the press conference. As a matter of fact, they probably stole the show of the press conference of Teo and Shakur. So Richardson Hitchins calls out Devin Haney on Twitter and says, Devin Haney, I want to fight you. F. Dalton Smith. Dalton Smith, you already know, knocked out Subriel Matias yesterday. Devin Haney responded, you call out everybody to fight nobody. Me, Keyshawn, Teo, Matias, Gary Russell, Brian Norman, Jermaine Ortiz, Frank Martin. You just be clout chasing, bro. Get in the field, F-boy. Hitchins replied, I called you and Teo out, F ninja. Everyone else called me out. Pay attention before you speak, and I'm willing to fight anybody, and you definitely first in line. I will smoke you. Devin Haney replied, you turned down $1.5 million to fight Keyshawn, then 2, but then turned around and accepted $700K to fight Jermaine Ortiz. You're a duck. If I'm lying, I'm dying. Richardson Hitchins replied, laughing my ass off. I don't know who told you them numbers or that lie. You goof funny face. Man, I ain't turned down ish. And the offer stopped at $2 million for Keyshawn. We wanted 2.5 to 3 mil for that fight. But why? Saying everyone else's names and the offer for you, guy. See if I decline. I made right around 7 figures to fight Cambosos. Why would I go backwards and fight for 700K? Devin Haney replied, why didn't you take that fight with Keyshawn for 2 mil? Hitchins said, you send me an offer and see if I decline, big dog. I will beat the effing dog-ish out of you. Now, let's be real, let's be honest. At this point, you can't knock Devin Haney. Devin Haney is ready to fight anybody, even Turkey Al Sheikh said in a Twitter post that Devin Haney is willing to fight anybody. It's easy doing business with Devin Haney and stuff like that. Of course, if you're getting $20 million, like it was reported that he got with versus Brian Norman Jr., he got more than David Benavidez, he got more than Anthony Yard, he got more than everybody in that card. Hey, I don't think Devin Haney's going to say no to anybody, not even King Kong. But when it comes to Richardson Hitchins, he's kind of in a weird place right now because Turkey Al Sheikh publicly said that he basically won't do business with Richardson Hitchins unless that Richardson Hitchins signed with Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing. That's kind of effed up in a situation because why can't a guy like Devin Haney and Canelo and Bud Crawford could deal straight away with Turkey Al Sheikh being a being a free agent, and why does a free agent like Richardson Hitchins has to be basically forced to sign with a promotional company. Well, he doesn't have to. He could work directly with Turkey Al Sheikh, and then he got to cough up some 25% promotional fee. Kind of weird the way that Richardson Hitchins is being treated, and that's what it is. The business of boxing, the politics of the sport of boxing. I am one of those guys that feel like, you know what, Richardson Hitchins, he abide by the contract, and he's a free agent. And why does he have to re-sign with Matchroom Boxing to do business with Turkey Al Sheikh? Let's see if Devin Haney's power, though, can convince Turkey Al Sheikh to be in business with Richardson Hitchins so they could get that fight. At the end of the day, I think there's a great fight, but it is a good question about Devin the Dream Haney. Why did you duck $2 million to fight Keyshawn Davis, in which Richardson Hitchins hasn't answered that question on Twitter? Maybe he'll answer it after the video. I don't know. But Devin Haney is free to fight, and it seems like Richardson Hitchins is free to get a voluntary bout. Again, he could dare to be great versus Devin Haney. I think it'll be a good fight. I think, they both got similar type of styles. Of course, Richardson Hitchins knocked out, stopped George Kambosos. Devin Haney became undisputed in the lightweight division by beating George Kambosos. But he did fight him 24 rounds. I think this will be a good fight. I think it's time for names to fight the names. If we want boxing to, ring bells, not only as a niche sport, but as a major sport. And I think that, we got enough talent, we got enough names, we got enough brands to fight one another. It's like, again, January 31st, we got Teofimo Lopez versus Shakur Stevenson. People know Shakur, people know Teo. That's a great matchup which uplifts and keeps the interest and sustain the eyeballs in the sport of boxing, right? Mario Barry is going to be facing Ryan Garcia in the West Coast. That's going to be a great fight as well, rather in Texas or on the West Coast. But a lot of these names is linked to one another. So, they're active. Names are fighting. And I think it's great for the sport of boxing. If we could get Devin Haney versus Rowley, Devin versus Hitchins, Hitchins versus Gary Antoine Russell. You already know they got their amateur rival where Gary Russell Jr. has beaten Richardson Hitchins, I believe, 4 times. We want to see a Virgil versus Boots. I think these fights need to happen. Sometime one got to dare to be great, move on to the next division. But right now for 2026, as much as I want to see, of course, unification bouts, championship fights, I think names versus names. Keyshawn Davis versus Richardson Hitchins could have been an extraordinary matchup, but Jermaine Ortiz versus Keyshawn Davis is a great matchup as well. There's people that felt that Jermaine Ortiz challenged Vasily Lomachenko, that it could have been a draw. People felt that Jermaine Ortiz challenged Teofimo Lopez, even though that, for me, in my opinion, he ran. I don't understand why people feel like that was a challenge. It was a challenge for him not to run. But at the end of the day, all these matchups is good for the sport of boxing. We need names versus names, relevant names versus relevant names for people to sustain their so these fighters sustain the eyeballs in the sport of boxing and keep that momentum. I think it's going to be an incredible 2026. There is no excuses for these fights not to take place. A lot of people fighting on the zone, people doing business with Turkey, promoters are doing business with rival promoters. It's time to make this fight happen and enhance the sport of boxing.